At the start of our story, we see an old man coughing and muttering, "I am an earthling from a civilized society. I came from a civilized society." Just then, a little girl enters his home carrying food. Seeing him in such a condition, she says, "Mr. Seo, are you okay? My mother sent this for you." We learn the old man's name is Seo. He thanks the girl. As she places the food on the ground, she replies, "It's not a problem. Please get well soon and make more soap." With that, she leaves, walking back toward her home through the snowstorm. This old man, Seo, once a CEO, is indeed an earthling and inhabitant of a highly civilized world. It has been 50 years since he fell into this cursed realm. He and several company employees, including Director Kim, were on their way to a workshop when a sudden landslide swept them away. When they awoke, they found themselves in a bizarre world, one filled with towering, three-tailed foxes, massive two-headed snakes, and sword-wielding warriors who soared through the sky. It was like one of the martial arts novels Seo occasionally read. Most of his colleagues adapted surprisingly well to this new world, except him. Among the 7 who fell into the martial world that day, their destinies unfolded rapidly. Within just 3 days, ethereal, sage-like beings descended from the skies and were astonished by his colleagues' mythical talents. Each of them was taken away except for Seo and Director Kim. They had hoped that they too would be chosen or discover some hidden ability. But neither had any unique talent. With no knowledge of this world, they could do little else but manual labor. For 6 months, they worked menial jobs in a bustling marketplace just to eat. Then one day, Director Kim had enough. He spent all his savings on a third-rate martial arts manual sold on the street. Everyone mocked him, but within 3 months, he had mastered it and became a full-fledged martial artist. He told Seo that he couldn't keep living like this and spent all his money on a third-rate martial arts book being sold on the streets. Everyone laughed at him. But within 3 months, he mastered it and became a full-fledged martial artist. He served the nation and continued learning increasingly advanced martial arts. After becoming a powerful warrior, Director Kim departed for the Jianghu, leaving Seo behind. Seo simply wished that something special might happen to him too. But in the end, nothing ever did. After 50 years, he is now merely an old man dying from a simple cold. He coughs up blood, repeating that he is from Earth. He did his best to survive. He learned the language, learned to read and write, worked as a laborer to earn a living, bought a small piece of land, and built his own house. He started earning some decent money when he began making soap using lye. In this medieval era, soap was practically a new concept. However, even that came to an end when some thieves stole his soap-making method and began producing their own. These thugs forced him out of the market. Now, he waits for death, having been rejected by this world. A frustrated CEO questions the world. "What do you want from me? Even though I gave it my all, what more must I do?" He begins to cry, wondering why he couldn't have been chosen, even if he wasn't special, and why he keeps losing everything. Now, Seo no longer has the strength to keep his eyes open. As they begin to close, he wishes that if he just had a little more power, maybe, just maybe, he could have had more chances. Lying in bed, sick with a cold, his life comes to an end. That was how he died, and how, bathed in a bright light, he opened his eyes once more. He slowly looked down at his body. It wasn't a hand covered in wrinkles and lines. It was a young hand, full of vitality and life. He was dressed in something clearly unlike the clothes of this world, the blue shirt and sweatpants he had worn back on Earth. He looked around, trying to make sense of the situation. Then he spotted Director Kim, Chief O, Section Chief John, Deputy Manager Kong, Deputy Manager O, and Manager Kim. Seo was stunned to see them. At that moment, he finally understood. He hadn't arrived in this world powerless. He had gained the power of regression. This was Seo's first regression. Director Kim, with half his hair shaved off, glanced around and asked, "What's going on?" "We were just heading to a workshop." He wasn't sure where they were, but Seo knew. This was the very first day. They had just arrived in this strange world. Seo recalled how they got here. They were in an SUV heading to the workshop when a landslide struck, and then something flashed. It was a memory from 50 years ago, so it was a little hazy, and even he couldn't remember it clearly. While he was thinking this, someone suddenly called out from behind, "Hey, Deputy Manager." But he was still lost in thought, wondering, "Now that I've regressed, how should I live?" In regression novels, people usually thrive using their future knowledge, but all I know is how to make soap. Suddenly, the man behind grabbed Seo's shoulder and shouted, "Manager Seo Yoon-hyun." Seo snapped out of his daydream at the shout. He turned around and saw it was Section Chief John. Seo said, trying to explain that he was slightly startled. But suddenly, with a swish, Section Chief John slapped Seo across the face. Everyone present was stunned to witness it. Section Chief John shouted, "Deputy Manager Seo, you bastard! You fell asleep while driving on the mountainside. You nearly got us all killed." Seo stood there, dazed by the slap. He had forgotten about this deputy manager title. It was a title he hadn't heard in so long that he didn't realize Section Chief Jien was talking to him. Section Chief Jien glared at Seo and asked, "Manager Seo, do you want to lose your job the moment we return?" Hearing that, Seo recalled the face he hadn't seen in ages, Section Chief Jien Myong-hun. He was the nephew of John Myong-kail, the executive director of the company Seo worked for. At just 32, he had already secured the section chief position through nepotism. When John Myong-hun was about to lunge at Seo in anger, Chief O stood up and held him back. He told Jan that was enough, since the landslide wasn't something Deputy Manager Seo could have done anything about. But Jan shouted again, asking, "Aren't you upset, Chief O? This crazy jerk was dozing off. That's why we're in this mess." Hearing that, Seo remembered that he really had dozed off while driving. But the reason he was so tired was because John had dumped all his work on Seo the day before the workshop, the tasks John had been avoiding, forcing Seo to stay up all night. Thinking back again, Seo also recalled that originally the person assigned to drive was John. He was the one who was supposed to drive. Pointing at Seo, John shouted, "The stupid bastard. We're stranded because of him." But Seo was gradually beginning to remember his memories from 50 years ago. Back then, Seo was so stunned he couldn't grasp what was going on. So, without thinking, he apologized to John. He even believed it was his own mistake. Then he spent the next 50 years just like that, constantly apologizing to people. Even when a group of bandits stomped over him and stole his belongings, when a damned martial artist insulted him, or when a regional official seized everything he had in the name of taxes, he kept apologizing. But there was one thing Seo came to realize after years of bottling it up. Sure, he had to control his temper in front of those he couldn't face, but not in front of everyone. Seo got up and, with a calm expression, said, "Section Chief John, I know you're upset, but this isn't the time to be blaming others." Hearing that, John became furious and charged at him. He punched Seo again, yelling, "Are you picking a fight?" That punch made Seo realize he didn't have to kneel before someone he could deal with. He turned back and punched John in the face, sending him flying. Watching that, everyone there was completely shocked. They couldn't believe their eyes. Seo kept punching John. In his previous life, Seo had been beaten by martial artists countless times. He was attacked by bandits while collecting herbs in the mountains, by more bandits during years of poor harvest, and even by officials because he couldn't pay his taxes. Now, Seo pinned John down, not giving him a single chance to fight back. Seeing this, everyone stood frozen in place, unsure of what to do. In that violent world, Seo managed to gain something the others didn't. He gained violence. When you strike someone in the eyes, their fear multiplies. And after a beating like that, only two words naturally come out of an opponent's mouth: "I'm sorry." Those were the exact words John spoke when Seo struck him in the eyes. Though Seo may not have the mythical talents mentioned by those transcendent individuals or the amazing martial arts that would make him famous in the martial arts world, he now did have the ability to change fate. Director Kim, Chief O, Assistant Manager Kong, Assistant Manager O, and Manager Kim were all staring at Seo with anxious eyes. Among them, Director Kim finally spoke with a shaking voice. "Deputy Manager Seo, no matter what, how could you go that far and assault a fellow colleague?" Seo didn't defend himself and calmly accepted it, saying, "Yes, you're right, Director Kim. I just lost my temper in that moment. I'm sorry for frightening everyone, though I won't be seeing any of you again anyway." He gave a polite bow to Director Kim and the other employees, apologizing for not doing more at the time, since he was the one driving. Director Kim responded by saying that yes, Section Chief Jien had been a bit too harsh, and that Seo couldn't really have done anything about the landslide. Still, Jien had overreacted. He then asked Seo to apologize to Jien personally, knowing that Seo would still be seeing Director Kim. Seo listened to his words because Director Kim would eventually become one of the strongest martial artists there once he began training. If Seo supported him as much as possible in this life, he was certain he'd benefit from it too. That meant he had to get on Director Kim's good side early on. Seo turned to Jen and, while extending a hand, apologized, admitting that his reaction had been excessive. Jen, his face bruised from Seo's beating, looked furious and seemed ready to attack him, but paused when he saw Seo staring back with lifeless eyes and no trace of fear. Once everyone had settled down, Director Kim glanced toward the forest and suggested, "Why don't we try to get out of these woods and search for a village?" Seo agreed as it was the logical step, but he knew this place was different. Immortals roamed freely in pursuit of eternal life, and the only law that ruled here was, the strong devour the weak. The people of this land, the Murim, fought with blades for wealth and honor. The name of this forest was Ascension Path. There were no villages, cities, or nations anywhere nearby. Seo turned to Director Kim and suggested, "Since the sun is about to set, why don't we set up a shelter in a safe spot?" Director Kim agreed that Seo's suggestion made sense but asked, "What about the car? We packed quite a lot of stuff in it for the workshop." There were many things in that car they could use, but only Seo knew they wouldn't be able to locate the car. He also knew they wouldn't trust him, so he decided to just let them search for the car instead of wasting his energy trying to persuade them. He suggested that they should split up. One team could search for shelter, and the other could try to find the car. They would meet back here before it got completely dark. After a few hours, they lit a fire in a cave close to the spot where they had first arrived. While eating, a black-haired girl said she didn't understand. "We were caught in a landslide while inside a car. So how did we end up here when the car is missing?" Director Kim nodded in agreement with the girl, saying he didn't understand it either. Everyone was gathered around the fire, eating. Pointing at the food, a girl remarked, "This tastes like chestnuts." Hearing that, Seo asked her if it was crispy. He told them he had plenty of it so they could eat as much as they liked. Hearing that, Director Kim chuckled and said, "It's quite a serious situation, but thanks to Manager Seo, we're actually enjoying ourselves." He complimented Seo, saying, "I knew you were this reliable even back at the company." While everyone was eating, Seo noticed John sleeping in a corner, refusing to eat anything. Director Kim raised his voice slightly so John could hear, "Manager Seo, if I remember right, you were exhausted while driving because you had to work late last night." The others agreed with Director Kim. A brown-haired girl told him their manager is truly hardworking. A red-haired girl also complimented Seo, saying, "It feels like we are on a camping trip thanks to this cave Manager Seo discovered." Seo knew they were right, since in his previous life they had only discovered this place after wandering in the woods for hours. But he remained humble and told them he had just been lucky. Hearing that, everyone laughed and told Seo he should just accept the compliment. Seo also felt that he should enjoy this moment, as tonight would be the last time they could laugh like this. The next morning, shaking with fear, Seo offered his greetings to the Lord of the Forest. The Lord of the Forest Seo was greeting was a massive seven-tailed fox with glowing red eyes. The fox gazed at Seo and, smiling, said, "You carry quite a distinct scent for a human. Even after living for thousands of years, I've never encountered humans like you." Hearing the noise outside, the black-haired girl woke up. She stepped out and asked Seo what was going on. But the moment she saw the enormous fox, fear took over and she screamed. Hearing her scream, the others also woke up and rushed out of the cave. When they saw the giant fox, they too were terrified and screamed. Hearing them, Seo turned around and shouted, telling everyone to show respect to the Lord of the Forest and kneel down. Upon hearing Seo, the seven-tailed fox said, "Every time I encounter you humans, I'm reminded of how foolish and disrespectful you all are." It told them that normally it would tear off all their limbs, but since one among them seemed to understand how to show proper respect, it would let them go this time. With that said, the fox declared they must pay a price for trespassing in his territory. If one of them offered an arm, he would allow them to remain here. Hearing the fox speak, everyone was already deeply frightened, and after hearing its demand, their fear only grew worse. Seo was also terrified because in his previous life, everyone who saw this creature had screamed in panic and they were all killed after enraging the fox. But this time, Seo felt slightly relieved seeing that the fox acknowledged his respectful behavior and wasn't tearing off all their limbs like before. Then, licking its lips, the seven-tailed fox asked who would offer their arm. Seo reasoned that it was just one person's arm that was all they needed to sacrifice. Besides, a lost arm could be healed by the cultivators who would arrive 2 days later. On top of that, Seo had already prepared an herb that would help reduce the pain. Thinking all that, Seo rolled up his sleeves and reached out his hand toward the seven-tailed fox. While trembling, he told it that he would offer his arm. Everyone was stunned that Seo was willing to sacrifice his hand for them. The seven-tailed fox opened its mouth and swiftly lunged at Seo, saying, "You know your manners, so in return I'll try to make it as painless as possible." Then, in the very next second, with a loud cry of agony, Seo lost one arm. The seven-tailed fox had completely bitten off his hand and devoured it. Everyone turned their eyes away. They couldn't bear to witness the horrifying scene unfold before them. Seo was overwhelmed by the pain. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he reached out with his remaining arm to grab the herb. The pain was so unbearable that he couldn't focus on anything else in that moment. He quickly consumed the herb he had prepared to relieve the pain. After devouring Seo's hand, the seven-tailed fox told him that it had expected him to taste different because of his unusual scent, but in the end, he tasted just like any other human. In fact, it said he tasted even worse due to all the impurities flowing through his veins. Hearing that, Seo slowly began to regain his senses. He was surprised to realize that the herb had actually eased the pain more than he expected. After calming down, Seo apologized to the seven-tailed fox, saying his offering wasn't good enough. But the fox showed no interest in continuing the conversation. It turned away and began to leave, telling them they were allowed to stay in its territory for 7 days, and during that time they wouldn't die thanks to its divine protection. Saying that, it leapt into the sky at incredible speed and vanished. After the seven-tailed fox left, the worried group rushed towards Seo to check on him. Seo slowly got to his feet and asked everyone to head back inside, saying he would explain everything once they were in the cave. Seo calmly explained that he had encountered the fox earlier that morning when he left the cave. The fox had told him that they were now in Murim. Everyone was stunned to hear that they were in Murim. Director Kim asked Seo if he truly meant Murim, as it was hard to believe something so unreal. Seo said it didn't matter and assured them they would be safe for a week since he had sacrificed his arm. Hearing that it was only for a week, Director Kim asked Seo what would happen after that. Breathing heavily, Seo replied that the next week they would have to give up something else. Hearing that, everyone was left in shock. As the herb began to take full effect, Seo started feeling drowsy. He told the others he was feeling sleepy and would rest for a while, hoping they'd understand. With that, he dozed off right there. Then, 15 hours later, at night, Seo woke up alone inside the cave. He could hear his colleagues talking outside. They were all upset with Jian, questioning how he could claim that manager Seo had willingly sacrificed his own arm. Jian snapped back, asking, "Then who's willing to give up their arm or leg every week?" But Chifo responded, saying that manager Seo was extremely valuable, as he was the one who had provided them with both food and shelter. Then John suggested that they should learn as much as possible from Seo within the week, adding that since he had already lost an arm, he likely wouldn't survive much longer anyway. That's why, he said, Seo should be the one to make the sacrifice again. John said all that, not knowing Seo had woken up and was listening from behind. What happens next? Stay tuned. The next part is coming soon.